Hello, my dear students, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. I know, your exams are just around the corner, and the tension is building up, right? Well, don't you worry. I thought, let's do something fun today. Let's do a super quick revision of one of my absolute favorite chapters, Ruskin Bond's The Adventures of Toto. It's such a hilarious story, but you know it has some really important lessons packed in there. So are you ready? Let's get started.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever had a pet that was just unbelievably naughty? You know what I'm talking about, right? You've all seen those funny Instagram reels or YouTube shorts, the ones with cats just pushing things off tables for no reason, or dogs that have completely destroyed the sofa. Well, let me tell you, our main character, Toto the monkey, could give all of those pets a serious run for their money. He is the undisputed king of mischief. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. How did this little troublemaker even enter the picture? Let's talk about how Toto, this new member, joined the family. You see, it all started when the narrator's grandfather saw this little red monkey with a Tonga driver, and the poor thing was tied to a feeding trough, a food bowl for animals. He looked so sad and completely out of place there. Now, grandfather was a huge animal lover, so his heart just went out to this little guy. He decided then and there, I have to buy him. And guess for how much? Just 5 rupees. That's it. What a bargain, right? Or so he thought at the time. Now, this is a really interesting part of the story, so pay close attention. It's the description of Toto. The author says he was a pretty monkey. Now wait, not pretty like beautiful in the way we usually think. No. His prettiness came from how full of life he was. The book says his bright eyes sparkled with mischief. He had these pearly white teeth that he'd show off in a big grin. A grin that, by the way, used to scare the life out of elderly Anglo-Indian ladies. And his fingers, the book calls them quick and wicked. And that description, my dear students, brings us to a very, very common exam question. I bet you've seen this one in your sample papers. In what sense is Toto pretty? It's such a great question to check if you've really understood the chapter. So how would you answer it? Let's break it down together, okay? Okay, listen up. To get full marks on this answer, here's what you need to write. The crucial point is that his prettiness wasn't about looks, it was about his lively and sharp features. So, first point, his bright, mischievous eyes. Got it? Second, his pearly white teeth, which he showed off in that scary grin. And please, don't forget his tail. Grandfather thought a tail added to anyone's good looks, and Toto's tail was super useful. It acted like a third hand. He used it to hang from branches or even to grab something that was out of reach. And finally, you have to mention his quick and wicked fingers. You include all these points, and I promise you'll get full marks. Okay, moving on. Now that Toto is in the house, things get interesting. His arrival wasn't celebrated with a big party. Oh no. It was a top-secret operation. Let's talk about the secret monkey. So why all the secrecy? Well, you see, grandmother was not like grandfather. Whenever a new bird or animal was brought into the house, she would always make a big fuss. So the plan was to hide Toto from her until she was in a particularly good mood. And where did they hide him? In a little closet in the narrator's bedroom, tied securely to a peg on the wall. They thought, okay, he's safe here. But boy, were they wrong. Just a few hours later, when they came to check on him, what did they find? The wall, which had been decorated with ornamental paper, was stripped bare. The peg had been yanked out of the wall, and the narrator's school blazer, oh my God, it was in shreds, torn into tiny little pieces. This was just the beginning, their first real taste of Toto's incredible mischief. So after that whole blazer disaster, Toto was moved. He was put in a big cage in the servants' quarters, where grandfather kept his other pets. There was a tortoise, a pair of rabbits, a tamed squirrel, a whole little zoo. But you think Toto made friends with them? Nope, not at all. He was such a troublemaker that he didn't let any of the other animals sleep a wink all night. But the trouble didn't stop there, not by a long shot. Next, grandfather had to travel to Sirhanpur to collect his pension, and he just couldn't leave this little monster, Toto, at home to cause more chaos. So he decided to take him along. And this, my friends, leads to one of the absolute funniest and most important parts of the chapter, the train adventure. So, how do you secretly take a monkey on a train? Well, grandfather got a big black canvas kit bag, put some straw at the bottom, and zipped Toto inside. There was no way for him to get out. But that didn't stop Toto from trying. On the Dehradun railway platform, this bag suddenly started jumping up and down and even rolling around. Naturally, this attracted a huge crowd of curious people, all wondering what on earth was inside that bag. Can you just picture that scene? Everything was going smoothly until they got to the ticket collector at the railway turnstile. As grandfather was producing his ticket, Toto decided it was the perfect moment to poke his head out of the bag and give the ticket collector a massive grin. The poor man was taken aback. First he was shocked, and then he recovered and said, "Sir, you have a dog with you. You'll have to pay for it accordingly." "A dog? Can you believe it?" Grandfather tried to argue. He even took Toto out to prove he was a monkey, but the ticket collector was stubborn. He just wouldn't listen. And so, in vain, grandfather argued. But in the end, he had to give up and pay 3 rupees as the fare for Toto. And the funniest part? The ticket collector had officially classified him as a dog. A monkey was charged as a dog. So much for that 5-rupee bargain, huh? Well, eventually, grandmother did find out about Toto, and surprisingly, she accepted him. He was finally given a comfortable home in the stable. But did that calm him down? Not a chance. In fact, now his mischief just got a bigger stage. The whole house, and especially the kitchen, became his new playground for chaos. You know, one of the cleverest things Toto did was take a bath. A great treat for him during cold winter evenings was a warm bath given by grandmother. And he was so smart about it, he had learned by watching the narrator. He would first cunningly test the temperature with his hand. Then he would step in slowly, first one foot, then the other. He'd even take the soap and rub it all over himself. And when the water got cold, he'd jump out and run as quickly as he could to the kitchen fire to dry himself. So clever, right? But this same cleverness almost led to a huge disaster. One day, a large kitchen kettle had been left on the fire to boil for tea. Toto, with nothing better to do, decided it was time for another warm bath. He took off the lid, checked the water, it was just warm enough, and he got in. It was perfectly fine at first, but then the water started getting hotter and hotter, and it began to boil. Toto would raise himself up a little, but finding it cold outside, he'd sit back down. He kept hopping up and down until grandmother arrived, just in the nick of time, and pulled a half-boiled monkey out of the kettle. Phew, that was a close one. But the incident that really sealed Toto's fate, the final straw, was the great Pullao disaster. One afternoon, at lunchtime, a large dish of Pullao was on the dining table. And what did the family find? They found Toto stuffing himself with rice. When grandmother screamed at him, he threw a plate at her. When one of the aunts rushed forward, he threw a glass of water right in her face. Then, when grandfather arrived, Toto grabbed the dish of Pullao and escaped through a window. He climbed up a jackfruit tree, ate every single grain of rice, and then, just to spite grandmother who had screamed at him, he threw the dish down from the tree and it smashed into 100 pieces. Well, after that Pullao disaster, it was obvious. Toto was not the sort of pet they could keep for long. Even grandfather, who loved animals so much, realized that things had gone way too far. It was time for Toto's final goodbye. So why couldn't they keep him? The book makes it very clear. Grandfather himself admits, we are not well-to-do. They just couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford the frequent loss of dishes, the torn clothes, the shredded curtains, and the destroyed wallpaper. Toto was just too destructive and, frankly, too expensive to keep. And so, grandfather made a tough decision. He found that very same Tonga driver from whom he had bought Toto, and he sold Toto back to him, but guess for how much? Only 3 rupees. Just imagine that. He bought him for 5 rupees and had to sell him back for 3. So in the end, Toto was not just a menace, he was a financial loss as well. So this brings us to a really important final question, something for you to think about. We all know grandfather was a kind man who loved animals, but when you think about all the chaos, all the destruction, and all the trouble Toto caused, do you think grandfather was right to bring him home in the first place? What's the lesson here? It's a really good point to think about, isn't it? And that, my dears, is the story of Toto the monkey. It's a very, very funny story, but it also teaches us something important, right? That wild animals, no matter how cute, are often best left in the wild. So, what did you think of Toto? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if this quick revision helped you, please don't forget to like this, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more videos just like this. Study hard and all the very, very best for your exams. I know you are all going to do wonderfully. Bye for now.